Hi everyone, this is Moni Singh, and I am so thrilled. I have Al Hardy with me today, and he is the CEO of Aero Training USA, and he has a wonderful career pathway that I think you will be really amazed to hear about. From being in the biomed side, going into military intelligence, and then bringing it all together as he applied some of his biomed equipment training into aerospace industry. So we'll get dive into it and learn from Al Hardy today. So Al, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I've been looking forward to this, and I appreciate you offering this opportunity for me to share my story. I really do.
Awesome. Wonderful. We are so glad that you're here, Al. So get us started with just talking about what you've done in your pathway. Give us a glimpse of your career.
Wow. Sometimes I really did feel like the ball in a pinball machine, kind of bouncing around. I knew what my objective was going. I thought I knew what my objective was going to be in my career, but all that time, even sometimes where I really felt kind of down and depressed because I didn't think that I was moving in a direction that I needed to move. I was actually racking up points for the future, and it all worked out. Originally, I'm from rural Alabama, about 600, a county, about 600 square miles. There are only somewhere between 12 and 10,000 people in the entire county. So I came from a rural area. I wanted to be a biochemist when I wanted to go to school, and I did enter college to become a biochemist. But at some point, I realized that that dream was possibly not going to happen for a number of reasons. One of them because just money to complete college, and I started falling behind because I was working and going to school, and I started seeing my friends graduate, and I figured also that I was missing something in my own development. So I knew because I had connections to the military that that was an option for me to find both to pay for school and to learn something about myself. So initially, I ended up into military intelligence. I used to work with the SR 71 aircraft and photo reconnaissance. From there, I moved to biomedical equipment technology because that was getting me back into closer to the profession that I had chosen. And after that, that career pathway kind of split, and I became what's known as an asset manager, which is talking about the life cycle of equipment or systems, whether you want to get revenue from them, decrease your costs, acquisition, disposal, that whole life cycle. And then in between there, I got married, had kids, um, and switched from the Air Force to the Army. And eventually I got out, worked for a hospital for a while, worked for a tech company for a while. And I said, I've always kind of wanted to open my own business, which I kind of dabbled in a little bit already. And I said, if there's ever a time for me to do it, now's the time for me to do it. And so that's where I started moving into asset management that led me to aerospace and aviation. So what happened was, as I was out there promoting my business, which at the time was Party Asset Management Consulting, that's a whole nother story. But I kept getting these requests like, hey, this is great, but can you help me find people who can operate this, who can repair this? And, maintenance and is really part of the asset life cycle. So I said, yeah, how many times am I going to have to hear that before I make that hard move? So that's what I did. And so I start getting questions from aerospace and aviation organizations as well. So that led me to Aero Training Center USA, and which I'm a joint venture partner and CEO. How's that sound?
Very, very nice. I mean, yeah, it is such an impressive journey, and I think the key message for the youngsters out there is that you can start in one somewhere, right, wherever your interest is today, but that journey evolves, right? You may not know all the answers as you're maybe finishing up your high school or you're completing your college, but the answer is going to keep coming. And most of the career paths I've seen, people go like it's a zigzag path, right? People feel like it's a straight shot at wherever they're going, but many times you do go, and that's the learning experience that people have. So this is an awesome, I love the story, like your journey, Al. And I kind of took some notes, and I know that this will be something that our audience will be very interested in hearing a little bit more about. So you mentioned you worked on SR-71 reconnaissance. Tell us a little bit more about it, because I think that's just so super exciting. Now, I know it's military, so what you can tell us about, like exactly, like what kind of work were you doing there?
Well, let's just put it this way. I spent a lot of time in the dark. So, and most people know that that's a photo lab, but the photo labs don't really exist anymore. They probably exist for some purposes. There are some photo labs that, you know, there are some purposes for photo labs, but it's nothing like it used to be. Um, you know, that was a process where you are in a dark room with safe lights, as we call them, and you had chemicals in which you would start that development process. It would form the image, and then you would fix that image. You would stop the image, and then you would fix that image, which means you would make that image permanent or give it archival value. And you could actually make prints from that negative as well. So all of that was a very when you're working with an aircraft like the SR-71 or any other type of reconnaissance aircraft at the time, it was really an industrial complex. I mean, we used hundreds of gallons of chemicals and water to really kind of develop this film. And sometimes it would take hours to go through that entire process of inspecting the film, developing the film, washing the film, fixing the film, drying the film, and then interpreting the film. So I was on that edge of digital photography. We'd heard about this system, and that the military was getting. We heard about it in one day. I came to work, and they said that, hey, Sergeant Hardy, why don't you come in and check out this new system? So I go in, and there were computer tapes at that time, and they were downloading images onto a screen. And at that point, I knew I needed to find me another job. So um, that's another one of those things when it comes about the displacement. So working with that program was very interesting as far as the nature of the work that we were doing. But we spent a lot of time making sure that actually nothing happened. So because it took a lot of money and manpower, and there was a lot of valuable information on that film. So we wanted to make sure that nothing actually happened to it, and that that process was very tight, and that we were able to get the information that we needed from it.
How exciting. And you just talked about a change in technology, how we moved from the regular, those were those little black film rolls, right? We moved from that to digital
Right.
photography. I think many of our youngsters may not even know about that. They may not even seen those reels, which was interesting back in those days.
Yeah.
All right. So if we move on to the biomedical equipment, and I know there's a lot of equipment that gets used in different areas. Maybe give us an example of a biomedical equipment, how it's used, what do we do with it, and maybe your role in terms of what you were doing about the management of that equipment.
Well, at first, interesting enough, that is another monumental change in my life, really.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Going through the biomed school in the Air Force, it changed my life. It taught me how I needed to learn, what I needed to do to learn and to be successful. And to that point, that was another issue I had in college, is that, I studied very, very hard, but my outcomes for studying that hard just did not bear out. But, in that biomed course, somebody who designed that course understood instructional design. When we came into class, yes, there was a lot of cognitive information that we had to do, but basically it was a problem solving, scenario every single day. Basically, we had to come into the classroom and like I said, we had a lot of cognitive information we had to know, but we had to get that information out of our heads into this critical thinking process. There were many days where we come in, we weren't even told what the problem was. We had to find the problem ourselves based on the information that we had learned. We had to describe the problem and write the problem for the instructors. Then we had to go and we had to examine that particular piece of equipment or circuit and, critically think and analyze what was going on and determine what was wrong with a particular component in that circuit. We had to extract a portion of that circuit out, put parameters on it, show that to the instructor, and walk through the process of how we found what was wrong, and then tell what the problem is. Literally day in, day out. That helped me. And plus there was a timeline on it too. They couldn't take forever. That
Mhm.
really helped me to sort out what I needed to learn in the classroom to be successful. So once I came out of that course, I became a much, much better student as well. So that's really the big, I think, takeaway from that whole experience. But as far as about biomed, if when you go into the hospital, whether you're on an infusion pump or you're getting a CT, CAT scan, or ultrasound, or you're getting your blood analyzed, we are responsible for repairing or maintaining that equipment. That's how I started out, basically as a technician, repairing, maintaining, calibrating medical equipment from anything from a digital thermometer all the way up to an X-ray unit. That's what
Mhm.
we did. And at some point, that path kind of splits where you can become a technician, kind of like a super technician, or you can become an asset manager where you're dealing with life cycle finances. You still have to retain a lot of your knowledge when it comes to operating, when it comes to really being able to troubleshoot systems and solve problems. But that's the path that I chose, the asset life cycle. So a lot of times when you are buying a piece of equipment, there's a lot of things that you need to consider um, beforehand, all the way up through the how you're going to dispose of this particular piece of equipment. Because back in the day, you know, patient data, we knew of patient data, but there wasn't a huge effort to make sure that all patient data was destroyed from a piece of equipment. So we had to understand all of that. And also, a lot of times, especially like with radiology equipment, there's hazardous material associated with that. So we had to understand that when we were disposing that, how we really need to handle that properly.
Hmm. I remember I was just at a hospital and I noticed there was like a big trailer truck outside, parked outside, and that was their MRI imaging, looks like on the wheels, which they had
Yeah.
deployed, which was interesting to see. And I was imagining there must be another, like a service provider that's maintaining that truck, like all the equipment inside that. But that was interesting
Yes. Yeah.
thing I noticed. Very nice. So now let's walk to the aerospace side. So you mentioned that you still work with all the different equipment that go into aeronautics. Now, give us a glimpse into maybe some equipment, so our youngsters can kind of get a visual of, what kind of equipments do you deal with?
Well, one of our major programs that we have right now is we help with what's called an NCAT certification. So
Hmm.
basically, we have this partner that when it comes to avionics, so avionics is really the connectivity within the aircraft between all the instruments and
Hmm.
and the interface with the pilots and the crew. So all of that communication process, there's a certification and training that needs to go with that. So that's one of our biggest things that we do right now is we help institutions develop NCAT certification programs. Well, we help them establish learning systems. We help them with curriculum that prepares them to take those NCAT certifications. So We don't teach the test, but we do have those curriculums that can lead to those certifications and help people be successful. That's one of our biggest things that we do right now.
That's
Another thing we
awesome.
do, is that, aerospace and aviation, uh, there's a lot of opportunities in aerospace and aviation, but the word is not out there as it is with other careers. Like one of the things that we always say is that when it comes to IT, you have hackathons, and these people can participate in these hackathons literally from all over the globe. The teams can be from all over the globe. When it comes to a car show, when a family goes to a car show locally, those kids establish a relationship there, and they're kind of bonding with the family, and they're looking at this automobile. They can see themselves, designing an automobile. They can see themselves repairing an automobile. There's just so many systems and things that they can get involved in. But when it comes to aerospace and aviation, we are mostly are behind closed doors and expos. But there is this group called ATG. They have these Aero Skills tournaments that literally go from coast to coast all over the United States, promoting aerospace and aviation. And they also have tournaments at these venues. And because we are going to from community to community, we actually meet with stakeholders. You can bring your kids to these tournaments and to these events, and they can see for themselves really what aerospace and aviation is about. So that's just a couple of ways of how we get involved as well. But we teach classes, we have seminars as well, reaching out, teaching people about aviation and aerospace. We have content, we have a certification process as well for a couple of different areas. You can find out more information on our website. Aero,
Yeah, and that's great. I was actually going to ask you about, if somebody wanted to get into this aerospace equipment maintenance or technician role. The certification that you're talking about, would that allow them to get a placement like that, or do they need to have some other degrees to go together with it?
well, one of the things that we do, for instance, because we are not a FAA school, and
Hmm.
I'm going to avoid all the terminology here,
Hmm.
but basically, if you want to be an aircraft technician, we can help you learn more about how to become one. And we can help point you to a school in your area to help you become one. But anything that's dealing with an FAA certification, those are things that we do not teach.
Okay.
But there are other things like avionics that are not mandated by the FAA. We can help teach those. So the best way to do that is just, you know, go to the website, atcusa.aero, atcusa.aero, and just leave us a message and we'll get back to you. You can contact me on Facebook as well, LinkedIn, and we can help you kind of sort through that process and help you find a place that, for you, help guide you through the process. There's a lot of information also available at the technical schools in people's areas. And we work a lot with the technical schools. We're not necessarily about our center and about what we do. We really are about helping the community, helping that community of schools, finding out how to work together. Matter of fact, one of our programs is at Technical College of the Low Country, where this is what we did for them. Um, they wanted to establish what they call a not for credit avionics program that leads to certification. So they were having some difficulty doing that. So the guy who was there at the time called me up and said, "Hey, Al, can you help me find some curriculum?" I said, "Yes, we can help do that." And then he called me back. He said, "Hey, can you help me find an instructor?" I said, "Yes, we can do that." And then he called me back and said, "Hey, what about this certification process?" I said, "Yes, we can help you do that." So we actually help them with all that. So That's what we can help the technical colleges and career academies in your areas. We can actually help set up those programs.
Awesome. And very quickly, the youngest set of people who can go through these certification programs, what age group are we talking about?
I'm sorry.
The age group of students who can go through these programs.
Oh,
When
oh,
can they
typically,
begin taking these programs? I
yeah,
think that's the question. Yeah.
yeah. Typically, many of the programs are what they call dual enrollment at Career Academy. Um, a Career Academy is basically a high school technical school,
Okay.
but they
Yep. So
also
city.
have, yes. So if you are in one of those programs, you can probably find an avionics program or an AMT program or a maintenance technician program there at those schools. And a lot of those matriculate into the technical colleges as well, because there is an age limit on some of these programs about how old you can be before you, and how many hours you have to take also before you can get your certification.
Okay. All right. So, again, for all the people who are very interested in this kind of the equipment tech space, give us if you have any events, strange events or funny events that you may have to deal with as you were working with some of these equipments, whether in the biomed side or the aerospace side. I think that'll be, I think it'll be a nice connecting point for the youngsters out there.
I really, when I think about it, there are really kind of two incidents. One is loosely associated and one is tightly associated with it.
Okay.
Let's start with the one that's tightly associated with it. This was when I was actually in biomedical equipment technology. There was a nurse, and this nurse was a single parent, and their child had this toy that would help them sleep and relax and stuff like that, and this toy broke. And the
Mm.
nurse tried to find a new one, tried to find something else, but the child just was not having it and was fussy and just had problems going to sleep. So the nurse came to me and was like, "Can you help me out? Because can you fix this toy?" And I listened and I said, "Well, you have to pay for the parts, but because I can't, use any military funds to do that or anything like that. If you pay for the part, I will on my own time repair this toy for you." So the nurse did that, brought me the toy, I repaired it. The nurse came back to me 2 weeks later, like happy. It was like crazy. I mean, I could literally, I think if the nurse could have floated like out of my office into heaven, I think that's what would have happened. Just that happy. So that was a really a good moment, for me actually, and for the child and for the nurse. The other one was another story. I won't tell it, but I switched from the Air Force, became an Army warrant officer. Um, so I had this buddy, and I needed to go by my house for some reason, and my son, he would when I would come home sometime, he would like to play these tricks. So this one day, I was coming back with my friend, and we were both in uniform, and I could hear my son get behind the door to kind of jump out and scare me. So I just told my friend, I said, "Hey, get out in front of me." He didn't know what was going on. And so he opened the door, my son jumps up, and he was like, immediately was like, "Ah, who's this man?" So, that was, he still talks about this. He still talks about it this day.
Very nice. Awesome. Al, what advice would you like to give to our listeners about, how they could, uh, any advice that you have, because I know you have a very exciting journey through your career pathway, how they could plan their careers.
I would say if you have a dream, follow it. Follow it, latch to it, with your claws, with your teeth, latch to it and follow it. But if for some reason, you know, it doesn't turn out the way that you originally imagined, there are so many opportunities out there. There's so many rewarding things that you can find. There's so many related things that you can find. Um, you don't have to, of course, when I look even at my own path, there were times there where I was, I was distraught. And there were times where, I was even, very tearful, very sad. But, somehow I kept seeing the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And I can truly say that it seems like even though I felt like that pinball that's been bounced all over the place, I think those bounces were kind of like pointing toward fate, you know, towards a particular fate or towards a particular thing. Because when I look back across my career, literally almost everything that I have learned, I'm actually using today.
Hmm.
And this is something that I could do until I just can't do it anymore because I'm meeting people, I'm helping them find their dreams. Sometimes I'm helping them redirect because, sometimes like with digital photography, with light photography, switching to digital photography where there's no longer, a dark room or anything like that. Sometimes you have to switch careers, and helping those people switch careers
Hmm.
is very, very rewarding to me. It's something that I love doing because I'm connecting with people, I'm helping them. And it's just an amazing thing that, some would say fate or God has brought me to. But so just see that next thing. Don't, yes, it may be traumatic, but try to reach out, see that next thing, try to keep moving from one point to the other, and you will find your way to success.
Awesome. Very nicely said, Al. Thank you so much for being with us here today and sharing your exciting career pathway with everybody. I hope there is a lot, everybody like enjoyed that. I had a great time listening to your story, and I'm sure there's a lot of useful nuggets of learning that people can extract from it. So, again, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your story.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.